Our next presenter is Audrey.
Hi, so I'll just share my screen here. You guys can see the slides and hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So my name is Audrey Benmergui. I'm a third-year industrial engineering student, and the focus of my presentation is in using role plays as a training tool for engineering instructors to develop confidence and empathy in the classroom. Think back to a conversation you've had that didn't go quite the way you would have liked it to. Maybe it was something small, like a document with a friend or a partner, or something big with higher stakes. After these situations occur, many of us tend to ruminate on it, thinking of all the things we could have, should have, and would have said if only we had known what the other person was going to say. But we know that in reality, hindsight is 20/20, and it's never possible to predict exactly what another person will do or say in a conversation because they're so dynamic. However, it's still possible to be prepared for unexpected scenarios, not by predicting what is going to happen, but by having the skills necessary to respond to any unexpected scenario. And my research this summer is on how to help engineering instructors develop these skills for when they inevitably encounter the unexpected. And I'll elaborate on this soon, but I just wanted to give a brief overview of the presentation first. So we'll go through some context of role plays in other fields and in engineering education training, then talk about the purpose and goals of developing our role play and the method that we use to create the role play and the results that we got from implementing it, and to concluding with future possibilities of role plays in engineering education training. So first, for some context, there are some skills that are best developed and honed through hands-on practice and experience. But sometimes these skills are ones that will only be used in high-stake or sensitive situations, like psychological counseling, aviation, and the emergency room. So in order to get hands-on experience with those skills without the risks inherent in an actual real-life situation, role plays and simulations are often used in these industries. And there's research in those industries that shows that these are effective methods in developing skills. And although it is not the same as flying an airplane, engineering educators also experience some high-pressure environments when they are having discussions with students about sensitive topics. Factors that contribute to this high-pressure environment is that the student might say things that the instructor did not expect. A sensitive topic might be brought up that has to be handled carefully and with nuance, and all the while, an instructor's unchecked bias can hinder the effectiveness of the conversation. And in order to handle all of these factors, the instructor requires the skills of empathy, preparedness, and bias recognition, all of which can facilitate an effective conversation between the student and instructor. And given that it is a high-pressure, high-stakes environment, it could be useful for engineering instructors to have an opportunity to have these difficult conversations simulated in a low-stakes environment so that they can get the practical experience to develop those skills of empathy, preparedness, and bias recognition. So we set out to create just that. Our goal was to develop a role play that simulates a difficult discussion for an engineering instructor. For that role play to be effective, it should be realistic, engaging, and promoting of self-reflection in the instructors so that it helps the instructors develop those skills that we spoke about. And in order to achieve those goals, we went through the typical design process. We conducted research about how role plays are used in other industries, what some common practices are, common strategies. Then we came up with ideas about what themes the role play should cover, and we decided on using issues that have been emphasized with the switch to online learning. So ours is about academic integrity in assessment design. And we also decided on what format to present our role play in, which was slightly constricted because of the pandemic, but that also afforded us some new opportunities that we may not have been aware of in person. And then we actually created a cohesive storyline, which was about a case of suspected cheating, a group of students that were suspected of cheating in an online test. And we had descriptions of each character. There was one instructor character and 3 student characters. And this also involved research to make sure that they were realistic. Then we got to test our design, doing a pilot run of the role play in a workshop with participants that were engineering instructors from institutions across Canada. And finally, we got results from observations of the participants during the workshop, as well as feedback from the participants in the form of surveys. And we place an emphasis here on the qualitative results, as this is a more early usability test that we can use to improve the design before testing it with a larger user pool. Throughout that process, we did a few things in order to achieve the objectives that we discussed earlier. For the roleplay to be realistic, we made sure to use issues that are relevant to the current moment, to consult with instructors who have experienced said issues, and we used themes from the literature about academic integrity to create realistic motives for the characters. As a result of these methods, participants expressed throughout the workshop that they related to the situation and had seen such characters in their personal experiences. To make sure that the roleplay was engaging, we had 4 different characters available for the participants to play, and we had discussions between different scenes of the roleplay for all the participants, even those not playing characters, to contribute and reflect. And we were able to observe about 90% of participants were engaged by speaking in discussions or writing in the chat during the discussions. And finally, to make sure that the roleplay was promoting of self-reflection, we sprinkled some reflective prompts throughout the activity, including debriefs after each scene of the roleplay, asking all the participants to share how they would have handled the situation, and getting participants to play the students' characters, which was a unique exercise in empathy, as they really had to put themselves in the character's shoes, and they got to know a lot more background about students than an instructor would typically know. And we also had participants do tasks before and after the roleplay to reflect on how the skills that they practice can be applied in their own courses. So although the long-term impact can't quite be assessed yet, since we only ran the roleplay recently, we made observations that at the time of the workshop, our design was able to impact the participants' skills, or at least their awareness of the skills that are required for an effective student-instructor conversation. Empathy was developed as instructors could see the student perspective of an issue that is common for them, and the importance of empathy came up naturally in the discussion multiple times, especially once the instructors got to hear the background about the student characters in the role play. Additionally, participants found that they could be more prepared based on the fact that they got to hear ideas from other instructors and institutions that they can implement in the future of how to connect with a student during these difficult conversations and how to prevent these issues from arising in the first place. And finally, they were able to recognize their biases by reflecting on their own strategies and motives behind those strategies. One example of a bias that came up is that instructors sometimes assume the benefit of the doubt for certain students, but not other students that the instructors consider to be the usual suspects of academic integrity violations, which are students who don't show up to class or don't do well. And they saw through the scenario that there can be many deeper external factors that contribute to making a student seem like a usual suspect, even though there are more nuances to that issue than the simple label. So what did we learn from this design project, and what does it mean for the future of engineering education? Based on our results, we can tentatively say that role-play-based training can be a useful training tool for engineering instructors. It is notable that the participants for our workshop were mostly experienced educators who are highly interested in honing their skills, but in the future, it would be important to test if similar results arise for less experienced or motivated instructors. In addition to iterating on the academic integrity themed roleplay that we tested for this specific workshop, in the future, we can also implement roleplays about various other difficult scenarios that engineering instructors face. For example, we're currently working on one about a remote engineering design team that faces difficulties working together. And also in the future, such roleplays can be experimented with and tested in various different mediums, such as synchronous versus asynchronous delivery, having it as a group activity versus an individual activity, having professional actors or participants playing the characters, and boundless other iterations. So I started out talking about how the problem is that hindsight is always perfect. And although this is true and we cannot predict the future, one can always prepare for it. And we see from our research that role plays can be a unique and effective way for engineering educators to prepare for sensitive conversations with students, ultimately improving the learning experience for both educators and the students. Thank you to my supervisor, Dr. Tihani, and to Corey Hansen for all the guidance in this project, and to UNERD, the faculty, and the sponsors for providing this great opportunity, and thank you all for listening. Sorry, I think you're muted, Stefan.
We have a question from Azadeh Sandia. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Audrey. And I have like one quick question regarding the role play based training. Is it widely practiced in other disciplines? And also I was wondering if you could give us one example of any scenarios that you have in your mind for the like the workshop that you evaluate that based on. Thank you very much.
Yes, so role-play based training is widely used in other disciplines like emergency room training and nursing and aviation. They use simulations, which is a similar kind of experience. And the second part of your question, one example of a scenario that we had was we had written this case about a group of students that were suspected for cheating in an online test. And there was a lot of background given about each student. One had a lot of pressures from outside they were working at the same time and they didn't have time to complete the test, and that's why they cheated. Another one was more motivated by trying to help out their friend. So this kind of covered a lot of different reasons for why students may cheat, if that answers your question.
Great, thank you very much.
The next question is from Wei Tiong.
Okay, hello, Audrey. Very good information. I just want to ask, like, is there any plans to kind of disseminate your findings to instructors? Because I think we all can benefit from your study.
Yes, during the workshops, we give feedback and we get feedback. So we get some information from there, but hopefully, yes, hopefully we can, once we get to test this with a larger pool of users, maybe that's something to explore. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question is from Ravi Raj.
Hi, thank you, Audrey. Really interesting. My question was about, I mean, it seems like it takes an enormous amount of effort to set this up, create the storyline, things like that. Is there any research or results to show that you do one set of role play, it informs other aspects as well? So if or do you really have to do every scenario to be prepared for it? Is there any transferability of the sort of the skills you learn when you go through a role-playing training exercise?
Yeah, so in terms of that, we do get some feedback about the actual, we get to see results about the actual structure, how that was effective. You were asking about the, the writing of the actual scenarios. So that is quite a laborious task for each one, but for each one of those, we look at the different research that's available on those themes, and there are certain ways to shortcut these things of asking people who have experienced these situations, and we do base it on other things, so it's not completely made up out of nowhere, if that answers your question.
Sorry, I think you're muted, Ravi.
I just want to say thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Audrey. If you have any more questions for Audrey, please add her in the chat and she'll get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.